country. But despite all this massive savage attack, friends, we're here today in front of the New York Times because they have successfully distorted the facts. They have presented Palestinians as the perpetrators of violence, and we all know that they're pure lies. There's a woman, a sister of ours, in the Haitian refugee camp. Her name is Muna Hassan, and every day she sends us her diary entries, so we know exactly what's going on. And I'd like to read for you a couple of excerpts so you all know what life is like in the Palestinian territories right now. This was written on Tuesday, a couple of days ago, on October 24th. It writes, "Dear diary, go away. Stop. Leave us alone. Cease your bombing. Enough. How many more seconds, minutes, hours, days, nights, and weeks do we have to endure your guns, your helicopters, your tanks, your tear gas, your bullets? How many more people do you have to kill under the pretext of defending your security? What about our security? Who will protect us from your slaughter? Who? No one, it seems. Absolutely no one. Not the international community, certainly not the United States, and most definitely not the Arab leaders. Do you detect despair in my voice? Well, do you? What do you expect? I'm tired of feeling like throwing up. Tired of the headaches, tired of crying when my friends and neighbors talk about their pain. Tired of being so darn tired all the time, tired of feeling so helpless. It was those damn helicopters flying endlessly overhead the night before last that got to me to be in the state that I've been in the past 2 days. They were bombing Beit Jala, Beit Sahur, and Aiza refugee camp, and their flying was so low. And then came the sound of the explosions. Was it 9 p.m. when I awoke to the sound of the shelling? Was I fast asleep to begin with? I don't remember anything anymore. Life under the occupation, my friends, is unimaginable. And here we have the New York Times telling us that Israel is under siege. They don't seem to understand that the Israelis are occupying illegally Palestinian land. So we're here demanding truth, demanding real stories. So repeat after me. What do we want? Truth. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? When do we want it? Now.
I'm here today demonstrating against the New York Times in support of Palestine. The New York Times, as one of the main spokesrags for the U.S. imperialist ruling class, takes the side of their watchdog in the Middle East, Israel, against the side of the Palestinians, who are fed up with a so-called peace process that basically puts them in a big concentration camp. A so-called peace process that's denied the right to millions of Palestinians to go back to the places where they were born, lived much of their lives in many cases, while people who have a very tenuous 2,000-year-old connection with Israel or no connection whatever with Israel can come back to serve as cannon fodder and as enforcers for U.S. imperialism. Of course, Israeli imperialism is a regional power in its own right, which is why it's so dangerous. As a supporter of the League of the Revolutionary Party, I would like to see in Palestine, throughout the Middle East, the working class take the lead in fighting this kind of oppression, fighting the massacres from this huge army and air force that Israel has assembled. It's workers' revolution in Palestine, that is to say all of Israel, all of the West Bank, all of Gaza, that can lead to the end of this oppression, establish a Palestinian worker state, and lead to revolution, I believe, throughout the Middle East. The Palestinian working class has traditionally been one of the most radical segments of the working class of the whole Middle East, sparking revolutions in Lebanon and throughout the Middle East, with a leadership that sees the way clear to workers' socialist revolution, with a revolutionary workers' party that has yet to be built. The Palestinian workers can overthrow Zionist oppression and lead the way to a socialist revolution throughout the Middle East, to a socialist federation of the Middle East.
What's the U.S. role in the Middle East? Can you explain that a little bit more?
The U.S. role is to maintain so-called stability. That means something in particular to the imperialists. It means that the working class and the poor peasantry, especially in the third world countries, is held down. The U.S. likes to do this with a pretense of democracy, with some kind of 2 or 3 party system where they buy all the parties. But if this pretext of democracy and so-called peace, that is where the two people are too cowed to rise up, if that doesn't work, the United States is just fine with a kind of massacres. We see the Israeli army, their helicopter gunships, their tanks carry out against unarmed or lightly armed Palestinians, asking for the right to live where they've always lived, to live like human beings. The United States, as I say, doesn't like uprisings. They hope to have a situation where the oppressed appear to accept their oppression. But if the oppressed don't accept their oppression and rise up against it, the United States is fine with massacres, bloody massacres, and will spread all kind of lies about how they brought it on themselves, they're terrorists, they're this, they're that, in an attempt to bamboozle and mislead workers in this country and all around the world what's really going on. The New York Times plays a role in doing this, although it's not a paper widely read by the working class. It is in the business of selling half-lies, half-truths to the middle class and the bourgeoisie, the very imperialists themselves of this country. And as sort of a showcase of power in the United States, we have to confront them. I have no confidence that the New York Times will ever be anything but a mouthpiece of a certain wing of U.S. imperialism, but we have to expose them. We have to show them up for what they are, and it's part of building a movement in the United States around the world for victory to the Palestinian workers' revolution.
We are outraged at the lies that the New York Times publishes every single day. And it's not just in the articles, it's in the editorials and the op-ed pieces. Offensive articles by Thomas Friedman claiming that he knows how to get peace. When our blood of our brothers and sisters is running like water in the streets of Palestine. Thomas Friedman, if you're in the building, you lie about our truth. You lie. And for the people who make decisions in the New York Times, how many Arab editorials do you refuse? How many letters to the editors of ours do you refuse? We know and we record that we write to you every day, trying to open your eyes to another voice, another single Palestinian, Arab, even an American voice that stands in alliance with the Palestinians. But no, it's letter after letter claiming, yes, the Palestinians don't know how to have peace, the Palestinian aggression against Israel, and suddenly a stone somehow equals a weapon of destruction. Guns, live ammunition is equated with stones. For all the policemen and all the New Yorkers that are watching us right now, I beg you to open your eyes to the New York Times and the lies that come out daily, that in the subway you read. We are just standing here for one reason, to tell you that there is a truth out there that you are not aware of.
We place all these weapons in Israel to go against the Palestinian people. It is a shame when we deal with all these social construction that we place the Israel people like they are the victims and the Palestinians are the aggressor. No, we're not going to tolerate this. This is not true. This is not correct. And we need to stop all this injustice against the Palestinian people. And I'm standing here because we have the same enemy. What they doing in Vieques, Puerto Rico, the U.S., they also doing the same in Israel, using Israel to go against the Palestinian people. This is the symptom. Where is the problem? U.S. imperialism, capitalism, dealing with all this expansionism and taking the land that belongs to the Palestinian people. For this reason, my brothers and sisters, we need to come together. It's not a matter who believes in God and who do not believe in God. This is not the issue here. It's not a matter where you're standing with your political belief or where I'm standing with my political beliefs. This is about justice. And when it comes to deal with justice, we have to say we do not tolerate any injustice against the Palestinian people. God bless the Palestinian people. I'm taking side with the Palestinian people.
It's their justice and our justice. It's in their interest to lie. Why do they lie? It's not because lies are so pleasurable to them, because through lies they keep confusion and they can maintain their power. We are the ones who don't have freedom of speech. We can't even talk without putting our ideas on a placard. They can talk by splashing their ideas in the mass media across the whole world. There is a media control that goes across the whole world. You can read it in the Spanish press, translated into the Greek press, the Arab press, the Spanish press. You go across and you see the same ideas. What is their idea of justice? It is totally different from ours. We are talking about equality, not equality for a few, but for everybody. We are talking about wanting a Palestine that is secular and open to all people, all religions. A secular Palestine for Muslims, Christians, Jews, and everyone else. We're not talking about a religious state. What we talk about is equality. Our ethics are different from their ethics. Call after me. We have a chant here. Whose land? Our land. Whose truth? Our truth. Whose brothers? Our brothers. Whose sisters? Our sisters. Whose Palestine? Our Palestine. Whose Jerusalem? Our Jerusalem. Whose truth? Our truth. Whose Palestine? Our Palestine. Whose land? Our land. Whose truth? Who is telling lies? We or they? It is in our interest to make distinctions, to clarify issues, and to inform. It is in their interest to lie, to confuse, and to create a smoke screen of accusations. How else can they maintain their interests? What are these so-called interests? Quote, interests, unquote. It all has to do with the imperialist control of oil. In essence, finally, it has to do with that. Why is it when they bombed Iraq, killing thousands of children, why is it that they bombed the so-called surgical bombing, all the factories, and created 90% unemployment in about 3-4 days? Is it because they simply want to kill and damage? They want to protect their interests, their money.
When those of us in New York come out on the streets to protest police brutality, to protest racism, when those of us in the Puerto Rican island of Vieques come out to protest the U.S. naval bombardment of that island, we have a chant, and I've heard that chant today because it applies to the struggle of our brave Palestinian sisters and brothers. And that chant is, no justice! No justice! Paper, like all of the mouthpieces of the corporations, of the interests of the wealthy, their whole purpose, the reason for their existence, is to sow confusion and to spread lies, to make those who are victimized look like they are the aggressors. Am I right? Yes. To make those who are oppressed look like they are the oppressors. To make those of us who find ourselves beaten or shot by some of these police on the streets of New York look like we are the bad people, and the police, they're only doing a good job when they shoot Amadou Diallo or shoot any of the other thousands of victims. Well, we are here, and we are black, and we are white, and we are Latino, and we are Asian, and we are Arab, and we are Jewish, and we come from many organizations, and we're here to tell the truth. The struggle in the Middle East is not a struggle between Arab people and people of Jewish origin. This is a lie. The struggle in the Middle East is not a struggle between Islam and Judaism. This is a lie. The struggle in the Middle East is a struggle of a brave, proud, courageous people, the Palestinian people whose land has been robbed from them, a people who suffer occupation, a people who are fighting for their rights, for justice, and they are saying they will not have peace until they have justice. And although they are shot down and they are bombed and set upon by the Israeli army, armed to the teeth with their guns and their tanks and their airplanes and their gun helicopters and all the other arsenal that they have. We must remember that this is only part of the picture, because the hand behind the Israeli puppet army is right here in the United States. It's the United States government, it's the Pentagon, and it's U.S. corporate interests. The Israeli army would not be able to shoot rubber bullets or any other kind of bullets at Palestinian young people if were it not for the aid that they receive from the United States government. This is the truth. And we must not let the U.S. government off the hook. Because why do they arm the Israeli regime to the teeth? They do that to make sure that U.S. will dominate the region, will be able to continue to rip off the natural resources of that region of the world. They do it for the same reason that U.S. imperialism is hated in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, in Central America, throughout the whole world. And so what we are saying, we have to tie these connections together. Earlier this year, some of us, maybe even some of you, traveled to Seattle to demonstrate against the WTO because they saw that as an instrument of imperialism, of repression, of globalization. Later on, we traveled to Washington when they had the big meeting of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and we demonstrated in the streets because we saw these institutions as institutions of global repression. The rich and the wealthy and the greedy and the bankers against the poor, downtrodden, and oppressed people of the world, from the Middle East throughout all quarters of the globe. And if those demonstrators who are there in the tens of thousands are able to realize that the just struggle of the Palestinian people is the same struggle as their own struggle against the evil, greed, and murder of globalization, then this will be the truth. And the struggle of the Palestinian people shall be linked to the growing worldwide struggle against globalization. I am telling you, sisters and brothers, we have a ways to go to make the connection, to educate the people, to merge the issues. But it's going to happen. And I say finally to my Palestinian sisters and brothers, my Arab sisters and brothers, do not fear. You are not alone. You will not be isolated. All progressive, freedom-loving people, regardless of nationality, race, religion, where they live, are with you. All of the people who are on the right side of civilization, the many marching against the greedy few who want to hold on to power, we stand with you. You will not stand alone. Long live Palestine! Long live Palestine!
Yeah, I just like to bring the attention of the American people to the injustice from the media and the government of the American people toward the Palestinian people who are really armless and don't have any defense. They've been under occupation for over 50 years. All they're asking for is to live peacefully in their land. The peace supposed to be on the basis of Resolution 424. Instead, United States and Israel start renegotiating 242. If they just implement 242, we would have peace. There is no problem. But instead, they want to control the land. They want to control the people. They're not interested in peace. It's very shameful that 365 House members, people who represent us, people who stand for liberty and freedom for all, this is our slogan in the United States, they vote to condemn the Palestinian people, the people who are dying there. The victims are being condemned while the armies, the aggressors who are shooting missiles from helicopters are defenseless civilians. They are considered to be heroes. They're considered to be defending themselves. They're under siege. Now, are they insulting the intelligence of the American people? I don't think so. They might be controlling the media and telling lies through the media all over the nation. But I think the American people know better. And it's time that the American people rise up through the internet and write to their congressmen, to their House representatives, that it's not only the little few lobbyists that are Zionist lobbyists that can control. This is our land. This is American land. It's our money that's going, $2 billion a year or more, $100 billion over 50 years, arming Israel so they can commit atrocities and do things that we do not stand for. This is really my message to the American people. Thank you.
To the President of the United States, I urged you. I would like you to teach our kids justice for all and peace for all. You taught our kids to play a music instrument because you play the sax. You taught our kids to be forgetful. Do you know, by your wife forgiving you, doing what you did with who you wanted to, but she forgave you, and your daughter Kelsey forgave you. Now your time to teach our kids to use their money for the right cause, for the cause of the Palestinian sake. Be fair, have justice, have peace. Teach them peace and justice, as you taught them forgiveness and how to play the music instruments as well. Please teach them peace. The right peace, the peace we know is peace. Be justice to the Palestinian people. Condemn the action, the aggression in Israel, in Palestine. Please, there's no comparison. The stone with a gun. No comparison. The stone with a tank. You can't compare those two.
Chant after me, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Occupation no more.
Well, I'm Jan Norden from the Internationalist Group. We're here demonstrating outside the New York Times today against the Zionist bombing and terror campaign against the Palestinian population. There's the entire population, Palestinian population in the Near East is under occupation, whether it's under direct Israeli occupation, disguised in the West Bank where Arafat is acting as a jailer for the Israelis, or in the refugee camps in Lebanon, in Jordan, and Egypt, where there are millions of Palestinians. They have the right to self-determination, the right to have their own nation, as do the Jews, the Hebrew-speaking people in Israel. We defend the right of both the Hebrew-speaking people and of the Palestinian people to the right of self-determination, to have their own country. But when you have two peoples in the same area, that poses certain conflicts, and that's why we say that these kind of conflicts can only be resolved in the context of a socialist revolution extending throughout the region, not just in the former Palestine, in Israel and so on, but throughout Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and so on, overthrowing the Zionist butchers, but also the the Egyptian regime, which is an utterly anti-democratic, anti-working class regime, the kings in Saudi Arabia and Jordan, the nationalist military rulers in Iraq and Syria and so on. Yeah, and that's basically what we're fighting for here today, is for united Hebrew Arab workers' revolution.
Growing up raised Jewish, I learned a lot of backward things too, though. You know, I was taught to side with the Israelis against the Palestinians. I was taught not to think too hard about it. One time in my Sunday Hebrew school, the rabbi asked us an ethical question, as if it was something to think about, whether it was right or wrong for the Israeli government to be trading apartheid South African regime for weapons, selling weapons to the apartheid regime in South Africa. There was no question in my mind. That's absolutely wrong.
We're here to support the rights of the Palestinians who are being victimized for many, many years, and they are just attempting to express their rights, and they are being killed for that. And we're just here to show some support and to protest also the coverage of the New York Times, which is extremely biased and anti-Palestinian. And we hope one day to be able to present a more balanced view in the New York Times.
Well, we're here to protest against the lies of the New York Times and the fact that most of their editorials, if not all, sound like as if it's an Israeli official talking, and it's not an objective journalist. And because of the fact that they keep blaming everything on the Palestinians, as if we are the ones who started the whole thing, and they keep forgetting that the Israelis are there as occupiers. And it's about time that somebody realizes that those are occupiers and we have the right to resist occupation. And the New York Times has to stop all these lies, and that's why we're here today.
Shame, New York Times!
Shame, shame, New York Times!
Hiding Israeli crimes!
Hiding Israeli crimes!
We're here today to get the true message out, because the U.S. mainstream media has been distorting the...
Yes, we're with you! We demonstrated at Times Square in New York City. We're here. We're raising our voices. Don't believe the New York Times. We were there. Even if we weren't covered, we're there with you. We feel your pain. These are our families. And my money as an American taxpayer is going to kill my family. How do you reconcile with this? I am outraged. I am outraged. I don't want your sympathy. I want a sane American foreign policy. And yes, as Muslims, we will fight for our brothers and sisters. But as people of conscience, we will fight for them. You've heard people from all different organizations. I beg you, the message is clear. Long live Palestine!
Long live Palestine!
And Jews and Christians and Muslims are not even the whole world. They're only a fragment of the world. We have brothers and sisters throughout Asia, China, India, Korea, Japan, everywhere, Africa, who are not these three religions. That's why we say it is the people united. That is why we seek our brothers and sisters who understand our struggle to help us.
Long live Palestine!
Long live Palestine!